Please give Andy a super warm welcome with lots of noise.
Hi, so although I said architecture at SkyBet, or Sky Betting and Gaming, I should point out that actually this talk ended up being slightly more opinionated, and hence I'd like to say that these views are my own, and are not necessarily the views of Sky Betting and Gaming. So I think that a lot of companies do Agile, or they say they do Agile, some do it better than others. But where there's often some confusion, I think, is where architecture fits into that picture. So I was really fascinated when I saw James's talk on the schedule, and looking forward to having a bit of a chat with James later about this. I think architecture is often seen as the phase you do before you get to the Agile bit. And so based on my experience as a software engineer, now an architect, been doing that for a number of years and been very passionate about Agile since I first heard of it, I'd like to share with you some things that I think are quite important if you want to do architecture properly. Oh, so I should say I've sort of structured this roughly around the 4 tenets of the Agile Manifesto. So starting with individuals, this is what software engineering looks like in most companies. Even quite agile companies, I think, look like this. You know, first one person does this, and another person does this. And actually, Kanban doesn't make this any better, right? You could overlay a Kanban board over this picture quite easily. And, you know, Kanban has some dangers, right? Kanban, in my opinion, tends to sort of encourage low collaboration because, you know, this is the guy who does the stuff in this column and so on. And it can encourage high whip as well. You're not all working on one thing. Actually, you've got a number of different things going through which might be unrelated. But the key point I want to draw out from this slide is that if we take this person over here, for example, her job title might be software engineer, might be developer, but that doesn't mean those are the only things that she's good at. So as a human being, she's got a whole range of experiences, skills, interests, motivations. She might be really good at UX design, or she might be, I don't know, might have good experience in business analysis or architecture. So I guess my point on this slide is that architecture isn't just something that comes from an architect's head. It's not just something that an architect does. Architecture should come from the heads of the people who actually understand the detail and the domain. Working software. So the idea of a separate architecture team and the ivory tower and all of that is much derided, and rightly so. And, you know, big upfront design, you know, we all know that's a fallacy and all this sort of thing. But actually, I think something that is often overlooked, and I think a lot of companies have architecture teams that are separate in the extent that the architects work on the early phases of projects and they don't really get their hands dirty in the implementation. And actually that's a problem because it means that these architects are going to be making decisions that they don't really understand the implications of when it comes to implementation and operational support. And actually, they're going to keep making the same mistakes over and over again with other people picking up the pieces. So architects need to be involved throughout, including operationally supporting the software that they're involved in designing. Collaboration. So I think that architects are probably the technical role that can least afford to operate in an insular way. As a software engineer, you can kind of get away with sticking your headphones on and sort of doing this all day. You can kind of get away with that. A lot of people do. But an architect needs to be out there talking to people. You need to be out there talking to the stakeholders, by which I mean anyone with an interest or influence over what's going on. They need to be getting their viewpoints and input. Secondly, they need to be working with the team who are going to deliver it. Hopefully, they're actually part of that team. And together, coming up with what that design looks like, as I said before. And then the third thing, I guess, is that once they have that design, it's about going out there and getting feedback on it. And there's not many roles, actually, when you think about it, who have to sort of take the work they've done and then go and talk to a dozen people and get feedback on it. That's quite a scary thing to do. And I think it's incredibly important that you do it because otherwise, as an architect, you're going to be pushing something out there that just isn't fit for purpose. It doesn't suit everybody's needs. You probably have some nasty surprises at the 11th hour. Responding to change. Can you put your hand up if you've ever been presented with something like this? Can you put your hand up if you've ever created a diagram like this? A bit of public shaming there. I think there is often a conception that there is some kind of conflict between agile and architecture, again, which was what was so interesting about James's talk. I don't believe there is any conflict there at all. I think that there probably is a problem with doing something like this. I think that the conflict tends to come, people tend to sort of think agile is all about, well, and it is, all about, incrementally delivering value and validating as you go along. And architecture is concerned with looking at the whole picture before you start. Well, you know what you do need to do upfront design. That is important. But actually the question is about a level of detail involved. So I think evolutionary architecture phrases it as, making decisions at the last responsible moment. For me, it's all about there are decisions that you need to make now, and there are decisions that you don't need to make now. Maybe that you can't make now because you just don't know enough yet. If you're driving to Edinburgh, you probably will have a bit of a look at the map and kind of decide whether you're going to go M6 or A1 or whatever you're going to do. But when you set off, you don't leave the sat-nav on the kitchen table. You take it with you, right? Implementation teams should take their architect with them as a sat-nav to help them with the technical decision-making they need to make as they go along. So with that out of the way, I'm just going to quickly mention 3 things that I really think are anti-patterns that you really shouldn't do in your company if you're serious about agile architecture. So I've already mentioned this one, but it's so important. Separate architecture team. If architects aren't involved in implementation or operational support, they'll be making decisions that they just don't understand the implications of. The team won't embrace the architecture vision, and the team will basically bitch and moan about the architect. And the architect will bitch and moan about the team as well, I guarantee. Formal architecture governance. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that I want to use an internet banking application where nobody bothered to check ISO 27001 compliance. But I'm talking about the heavyweight process, the architecture review board, the board of senior techies who make decisions about things at a distance from the team who are actually mired in the detail and the domain and actually doing the work. Massive fallacy. If you have that kind of process, people will work around it. It won't buy you anything. It won't give you the confidence that, it'll give you a shallow sense of confidence that you're building the right stuff, but it's not true. It's better to trust the people who are actually doing the stuff to actually know what they're doing. And if they make mistakes, well, train them and support them to do it better next time. And then the third one, and this is just a little pet hate of mine, I guess, is tools like, this particular one is Enterprise Architect. It's a Spark Systems product. And it's all about architecture modeling, but it's not just diagrams. It's where each one of these boxes is actually an entity where you put in all the data types, the fields, the interfaces, the relationships between entities, and you build up what you hope is going to be an accurate model of a software system. You know what? It'll be out of date a week after you've done it. It's a massive time sink. Don't bother with this rubbish. Seriously. My personal opinion, not SkyBet's. And you know what? They're not good at conveying concepts. That is the whole point of an architecture model, an architecture diagram, is to convey a message. It's all about bringing out the things that are important and not including the things that maybe aren't important, or highlighting certain things, and making things visually compelling and easy to understand. These tools will not help you with that. So in summary, I think that architecture is something that should be done within a team, as part of the team that are doing the implementation and that operationally support the software. Ideally, you'd be working on one thing at a time. And finally, I think that an architect should be a sat-nav for the team, should be there along the journey, helping to facilitate the technical decision-making when those decisions need to be made. That's it. Thank you very much.